Good evening to all the delegates of the academic fraternity. On behalf of the Department of Bank Management at Raj College for Women, in association with Beta Monks Factory Private Limited, I extend a very warm welcome to the day 2 of the one-week National Online Faculty Development Program. The Unlock Down, Challenges and Opportunities in Business Post-COVID. Thank you all for your enthusiastic participation. To replenish our memory, the aim of the FDP program is to enrich and augment the knowledge of teachers in the field of entrepreneurship by interaction with successful women entrepreneurs from various sectors for practical insight, to harness entrepreneurial values in teachers to imbibe the same among the students, and to transform teachers as powerful mentors to guide young minds towards entrepreneurship. Let us get started with today's session, the theme of which is ABC of E. And we greatly look forward in hearing the entrepreneurial experience of our today's distinguished resource person, Ms. Pooja Sani. I hope we have done our assignment of going through the brilliant journey of Ms. Pooja Sani to better understand her today's presentation. I call upon my dear colleague, Dr. N. Nandini, to do the honor of welcoming our resource person of the day. Over to Nandini.
Thank you, Renuka. It's a pleasant evening and I welcome all the participants. I have the pleasure of introducing the speaker, Ms. Pooja Sahni, an entrepreneur with more than 25 years of experience across diverse industries, a seasoned professional with international experience across industries from garment manufacturing, aviation, accounting, business sustainability, energy, and power. At present, she is a marketing communication specialist, Manta Heart Clinic, marketing consultant, Sigma Hospital, Hyderabad, communication strategist, Rhapsody Synergy Consulting, founder, Navika Garments Private Limited, which is specifically known for the 16 flattering fits that it offers. Objective being to provide apparel which are comfortable, fitting, and good looking for any situation. An alumnus of Indian School of Business, specialized in project setup, network, and liaison. She is a Thai language enthusiast with business level proficiency and is pursuing higher levels of Thai language in Bangkok. Loves to travel, bake, and read. Thank you. Over to Ms. Renuka.
Thank you, Dr. Nandini. Before we go to the audio-visual presentation on our resource person and information to the participants, this session will be more of Q&A, and the participants are requested to post their questions as the presentation goes on in the Q&A box and use their comments in the chat box. So please, if you have any questions, please post it separately in a Q&A box available. Thank you. Over to Ms. Sendamri for the audiovisual presentation.
It's just taking a minute here. industry. I'm sure it should have been a great journey, Pooja. So, thank you so much. It's going to be a wonderful session today. And yeah, I'll start your presentation now.
Yeah. For some reason, I think I can't see. Okay. Okay, yeah.
1 minute.
So,
1 minute. Can you see the screen now?
yeah.
Yes. Over to you, Pooja.
Okay. Thank you so much to all the faculty members, everybody who's present today, and of course, Beta Monks for giving me this opportunity to learn during this discussion. I think this time is so precious for all of us to get in some more learnings. It's only about learnings now. So I have put together a very small presentation which is called the ABC of E. It's the ABC of entrepreneurship. The journey of an entrepreneur is very, very lonely, and I feel that after this session, in fact, after all these panelists have spoken to you, in case you feel that your journey is made easier even by the smallest fraction, I think it will make a lot of us very happy, because it's a very tough journey. And as you've seen now with the COVID-19 scenario, you know, it's such a novel scenario. Nobody knows what to do actually. Therefore, there is a fear of unknown, and these kind of situations keep coming. I have seen a few cycles on my own, the economic cycles. I've ridden the high waves, and I always knew they were temporary. We would crash eventually, and then we'd pick again, and then we would crash again. So nothing is permanent. If that is something that we can imbibe in our business practices, that it is going to change again, and work with that kind of caution, then I think you're always covered. So that's my takeaway from the last 25 years, because I've seen quite a few economic cycles in this country and in the world. Unfortunately, Corona has impacted everybody in the world in exactly the same way, and no one knows how to get out of this situation. There are no right answers here. So if you see the first slide after, Santa, can we change it to the second slide, please? Yeah. I have brought about three main challenges that I would like to talk about. What is the nature of business? What makes business business? How do you pedal through the business cycle? And that not all stories end. There are a lot of businesses that are closing down, but I can assure you that many will prosper, and many will not end. They will change course. We have to adjust our sails according to the wind. It's not going to be the other way around. So if that's very clear to us, then I think there's nothing to fear. If you come on to the fourth slide, Senta, the first point that I've made here is Navika Garments and Rhapsody Synergy are by the same founder. I have just been teaching very recently at the University of Tyumen, and that's in Siberia, Russia. And we were talking to a lot of young students who were aspirants in the IT sector. And they kept saying, you know, how can you tell us when you yourself are not from the IT sector? So the point that I wanted to make here is IT is just a medium of delivery. The business stays exactly the same. Navika Garments is a product-based industry. Rhapsody Synergy is a service-based industry. However, the business cycle is exactly the same. Rhapsody has delivered work in so many industries, in the healthcare, energy, finance. So that does not mean that I have to become a doctor to deliver in healthcare, or I have to be a scientist to deliver in energy, or an engineer to deliver in aviation. No, not like that at all. You have to apply the same principles of doing business to your various sectors. and there is no difference in products and services in principle. Yes, there are a few differences which can be overlooked. Your basic command over business will come if you understand what it is about. And a lot of webinars that I've been asked now, how are you going to handle the post-COVID scene? For me, I don't see any difference, because the way I had started out, I was unsure of myself. The way I am today, I'm unsure of myself. So I'm going to do exactly what I did then. Of course, I have a lot of experience under my arm now, so I can talk about lot of learnings that I have over the last 25 years. But in principle, I will be doing the same that I did in the beginning. And that is the reason I had sent you the pre-read. So if we see slide number 6 now, that is peddling the life cycle slide. The first point at which I began was searching for the problem solution fit. This is something I have mentioned in the pre-read. I began with children's garment. So what was the problem and what solution did I provide? This is how we have to think. The problem in those days was that Tirupur had flooded the market with a lot of hosiery frocks. And one frock looked like the other and the other like the other. And what I did was to provide a very Victorian style baby frocks to the market, which had laces and little embroideries, and they were made of woven fabrics. They had bibs and, you know, that novelty factor. So that is what drove the market, because everyone felt that, you know, if I buy a frock for my daughter's birthday, she's going to look like exactly one of the guests who's attending it. So with that mindset, you see that there was a problem and I was able to provide a solution. When I entered the women's market, the problem was that there were no fits that could fit the curves of an Indian woman. So the solution that I gave was was to evolve a complete sizing chart, which was completely indigenous. It was a sizing chart that I developed after taking the measurements of 2,000 women and then standardized it, and therefore we got the perfect fit. So unless there is a solution to a problem, you don't have a business. Now, if you come to the next part of this curve, you find that I have mentioned a point called MVP, which is the minimum viable product. Did I make 700 frocks and take them to the market? No, I didn't. Did I over embroider the tunics, put a lot of money in the product, and then take it to the market when it came to the women's wear? No, I didn't. So what am I doing today in the post-COVID scene? Exactly the first two problems, the first 2 points I have covered is, the problem today is that women are not going to be leaving their homes to work. So the work from home range started. The minimal viable product that they need is something that looks good around the neck area, because that's all that they feature in a Zoom call. So that's what I've done today. The first time when I started, I kept it by managing my inventory. So we never crossed the minimal viable product. We never got into a very expensive space. Then searching for the product market fit language. What is the market fit of Navika? Did we say we make beautiful gowns, you will look like a princess? No. The business promise that we made was always 16 flattering fits. Now, of course, we have more than 16 sizes, so we have culled it to flattering fits. Whatever is the business promise, we deliver. We always said we make clothes for working women. We introduced colors like khaki and olive in the Indian market, which was primarily green, blue, red, orange in those days. And today we have a lot of soft, wrinkle-free cottons that we bought into the work from home range, because the woman is pressed for time. She cannot iron. She wants to look good. She wants colors that suit her. At the same time, she's at work. She's not really on a vacation. So this entire work from home range has been made around that. What are the pain points of a woman, and How are we answering them? And the language, the fit, uh, the market fit is exactly to answer to those, so that she's informed that there is a product like this in the market, you can get it. And that is what we are basically doing by using the right keywords. Now you come to the product, optimizing the funnel and searching for channel product fit. If you come to that point of the graph, you'll realize a lot of people start selling their products physically by sending them to different destinations. Now, if you have to do that, then every destination should have minimal stockpile. So if you multiply your destinations by 10, that means you have to produce 10 times more. So to produce 10 times more, you need that much of capital. So to block in that kind of capital, take that kind of risk, I'm not sure. So what I feel is that at this point, what I did again at the beginning of the business is what I'm doing now. I have partnered with people who furthered our WhatsApp messages, Insta, Facebook, and we pay them a commission on that. However, we are shipping the products ourselves. We are not sending the products to different locations. Yes, we have 11 locations which were stocked before COVID, and they will continue. They, of course, have been our vendor partners for a very long time. But in today's scene, to buy so much of stock and not be able to sell it would be a challenge. We still don't know how things are going to be, what is the buying behavior of the customer. So should you be blocking your money in that kind of stocks? I don't think so. So I would say we are doing exactly what we did in the beginning. Now, pour on the resources for growth. This part has yet to come. I think we will look at it somewhere in August or September. You bring in your money only if you have liquidated the past. If you have not, please do not put in fresh resources of any kind into your business. You will find it very, very tough. We don't even know if we are going to have a second wave of corona, whether we are actually going to shut down once again. So in an unforgiving circumstance like this, let's not get further into a sort of danger of blocking our resources. Don't buy until you have sold. Replace the stock that you need to replace. So I think that would be the most prudent advice. And grow through acquisition and international expansion. Now, what has happened through Rhapsody, we have got to know of a lot of companies in Canada and the US which want to stock Indian products. So, we are now trying to grow only through this kind of an expansion space, because now every business, big or small, will become digital, and it is only a matter of shipping it across. That's all. So you don't really have to block your stocks, block your investments by making too much. You have to be working very close to your suppliers so that you get JIT, that is just in time, and you're able to produce and send it ahead. So that is now coming on to the slide number 7, the problem solution fit. You all will have some idea around which you want to base your business. Please don't base it on a personal win. I have met a lot of young entrepreneurs who say, I want to get into your space of selling garments because I love clothes. We all love clothes. Don't start a business just because you love clothes. Until you have a solution for a problem or a pain point in the market, please don't attempt any business. If you feel that I want to start food delivery, please also have a look at the amount of competitors you have. How many Swiggies does India need? How many Food Pandas does Thailand need? You don't need so many. So don't compete in a space that actually does not have space for you. A lot of these ideas have been done to death. So that's what I want to say. When you have an idea, attack it from 12 angles, not just one. If you feel that, yes, now it is going to work, only then do it. Don't start YouTube channels without content. This form versus content is something that I have been fighting all along in Rhapsody. People get into online businesses without having the content for it. Please do not start anything until you really know what you're doing and what pain point it answers. You cannot flood YouTube also, with the amount of people who are into makeup advice, cooking shows. No, we can't do that. After all, there's got to be a limit to the amount of cooking shows anyone would watch. Until you have a USP, don't get into that market. Again, going through the slide number 8, establishing the product market fit. I have already mentioned that I focused on the minimum viable product when I started. I'm going to focus on it today. Whatever it is, please ensure that the functionality of your product is put on the top. In Navika clothes, everybody says we look at least 2 sizes slimmer. So that becomes the distinguishing feature. So if we cannot distinguish, what are we selling? If the person can come to me, they can also come to Zara, they can also go to H&M. So what are the distinguishing features that I have as a supplier? One, I am doing more plus sizes now. I have moved away from what sizes worked 25 years back. Women were slimmer. And today the market has reached a stage where we have gone up 3 sizes. And that is the smallest sizes. So 3 sizes means every size is 6 kilos. So that means the average woman today weighs 18 kilos more than what she weighed 25 years back. So we have come to that point now, and we are now trying to serve that market. Now, why that market? Because again, that's a market that is highly underserved. I know that from facts, figures. So I want to serve a market where I know I will sell, and I know that my customer's pain point will be answered. Therefore, I will find it easier to scale. So that's why I'm taking this opportunity post-COVID. I'm actually moving away from the regular sized market, and I'm actually coming into the plus size market. India is a tropical country, so I'm focusing more on handloom, because that product is not available in the market. Handloom plus sizes are not available. Coming to the 9th slide, I have evolved this fit model of mine through research. Please do not go by gut. There is nothing called gut. We can go wrong. Knowledge empowers you. I did 2000 measurements, and I even got the ladies to stand on the scale, and I used to give them a 30% off if they stood on the scale, and I would take down the measurements. So I made a correlation between weight and body measurements. So I know for sure what I'm talking. And by the way, we sell a lot in Chennai. So all those who are listening, you can please go have an extra meal today. We'll have all your sizes covered. So this is the fact of Navika. Facts are only established once you have researched. I would never say that go by your gut. Don't go by your gut. Everything needs to be verified. Until you verify, don't believe it. What is the shortest and the most effective route to reach your target customer? Don't take long routes. Don't give your stock to people saying you can go and sell, you can do this, you can do that. Try and reach your customer one-to-one. When you have that kind of proximity to the customer, they start opening up to you. So I have had so many women who have come and told me that, because of the way I looked earlier before I started wearing Navika, and now my performance at work has gone better. It's very easy for me to dress because I don't have to wear a corset anymore. The pants fit me anyways. Some of them have said that, you've cut down our dressing up time to just 10 minutes. So please start talking to your customer. It's very important for the entrepreneur to know your customer. The more you talk, the more you will be empowered, the more knowledge you have. don't experiment too much at this time, especially post-COVID time. Don't experiment too much. Don't copy your competitors. That's one more point I want to say, because I was listening to some of the audience members on a webinar, and they all said, so and so is doing this, let me do the same. No, we will not do the same. If you do the same, then there is no distinguishing factor. Pay attention to that distinguishing factor. That is what the customer has come to you for. If you take away that novelty, then you're offering what everyone is offering. Then it becomes a price war. And a price war is something that you do not want to get into. You'd rather get into a value war. Value for money, not a rupee for a rupee. Here I would like to talk on the 11th slide, which is accelerate for growth. At this time, especially in Rhapsody, we have employed this. We have recently invited a very senior person who holds great command in resource management and operations management to join us. The fact is that at the moment we need experts with very, very deep expertise to bring value to the customer. The client is going through so many changes, not just at a marketing level, not just at an operational level, not at a product offering level, at all levels altogether. So if you're trying to help your customer, ensure you have a very, very good team, because at this point they're very, very sensitive. And if you help them during this point, you don't have to make a marketing pitch to them ever again. They will believe your expertise, because everyone's going to come out of this. The 1 year will pass eventually. With COVID, without COVID, we are all going to come out of it. And then what? So it is nicer to have your team also get a nice brush up session on what's happening in the market. We do that every day. We have we call it the morning huddle, where all of us get onto Zoom and we discuss what we heard in the market, what our customers told us. It's very critical. If you want to build in expertise, get everyone to listen to the customer, listen to the market, keep your ears to the ground. You will be picking up some very, very important signals which are extremely valuable. And please help your customer a lot in these times. You will never have to go and make a marketing pitch again. And now what happens is, you cannot sell, in the second point I've mentioned, you cannot keep selling the same product over and over again. So how do you move to a different product, or how do you move to a different market? Which of this is easier for you? You decide that, but you do that. Don't do both of them together. So when I started out at making kids clothes, I stopped kids clothes completely and I started making women's clothes. I also started to distribute women's clothes through different channels. Therefore, instead of just going for product expansion, go for market expansion also. These are expensive things to do. So use your money very wisely. In the 12th slide, in the 13th slide, I'm going to talk about one of the recent recessions that I remember. Stories will not end if you have your ear to the ground. When we rode the highest wave, I don't think we can ever do a turnover of what we did in those days. When India had just opened up, all the BPOs were resettling in India. There was so much of money in the market. Everyone wanted uniforms. Hotels are opening left, right, and center. I'm sure most of you remember the time when we had to, kind of drive, and there would be 5 hotels, so if you wanted to go and get a meal, you would say, oh, drive to this point, drive to that one. There were not more than 5 hotels in a city. And then came the time when Novotel started opening and Radisson started opening. And I think today every city has more than 30 hotels. That was the time when the uniform market for Navika grew. And I have yet to do that kind of business again. So we were making uniforms for all the hotels in and around Andhra. So I was handling all of West and all of South. And then we rode that wave. We rode that wave of a time where we would say, okay, I think today I'm going to get X amount of orders, and I used to get it. I would get it. And then, because we knew that from previous experience that things will always not stay at this level, we started to notice a time when payments started to get a little delayed, when we were not called for measurements that often. At that point, I started to move to the workwear sector for women. I knew that it was just a matter of time and we'd be closing down the uniforms forever. And then it happened. In 2008, everything came to a grinding halt. But by that time, our working wear for tropical climates had already taken good shape in the market, and we started to sell that instead of the uniforms. So these kind of changes will lead you to form a new product. But if you do not keep listening to your customers, if you don't look at your bill books, you will never know. So my advice is always keep your bill book close to you. That will tell you what is selling, what size is selling, what price points are selling, how many customers repeat. If they repeat, why do they repeat? So you will get your story all in one shot. So this is all I have to say from my story according to the pre-read, which gives you Navika starting until the end of the first financial crisis that I remember seeing, 2008 financial crisis. And we haven't stopped since. We've been in business for 25 years. Our business has gone up and down in terms of only top line. Our bottom lines are very, very critically managed. Therefore, the profitability of the business has always been switched on. We have never invested in great amount of stocks. We have never made clothes that were simply good looking. Until they look good on you, the wearer, we never really put them out in the market. So we always celebrated our customer in terms of the inputs that they gave us. And we always changed when we had to change. Whether it was culling a few sizes, we have also added a lot many sizes now. So we've added more plus sizes, and we've taken away some slim sizes, regular sizing. So, you know, these kind of changes you can only make if you're listening. If you're not listening, you will miss the point that you were to make. So thank you so much for going through this with me, and any questions and answers, I would love to take them on now.
That was a very beautiful and interesting session, Pooja. In fact, I think from the hard work, what you have put in building your brand value, and I will say you are the brand. This 25 years is a very long journey, and that's very visible in the journey what you have covered, like focusing on the MVP, the product market fit. This all comes with experience. This all comes with. So I'm sure there's a lot of takeaways for the audience as well. I would like to start the Q&A with one important aspect. We have covered what is Navika. We have seen what Rhapsody does. But as a person, as Pooja, what triggered you to get into entrepreneurship? I mean, Navika's.
You know, I was just asked the same question, and in Russia when I was teaching, and they said, "Why did you get into it?" And especially, from their point of view, we are a very traditional society. I don't think so. I think India is the land of opportunity, especially for women. But when they asked me that, I would go back and say, I don't think I knew consciously what I was doing. I was in the shipping industry. I brought in Maersk Line into India. In fact, I was very, very well achieved when I worked in Sandvik. Though I was just trainee, I bought in the Nepal government railways project. So I think when I look back, I feel I just jumped into it for some reason. I can't put a point to that, but I think I always knew that whatever I take up, I will carry it on my shoulders, and I will not go back cribbing, because that's the way I was even personally when I started off with Sandvik and Maersk. I was always chosen to do the more difficult task. So when I look back today, I think those probably those qualities that kept me completely focused on what I had to deliver. and I was always aware of the person that I had to deliver to. So I always knew that I will make that extra effort and I will make it happen, but I don't want disappointment to, settle in with the client. Uh, Having that skill set or talent, I think I took in the plunge, because when I did the first 5 frocks, I still remember that I just about got home after delivering the frocks to the lady, and she said, I have sold all of them. So, I kept the quantity very limited, something I could swallow. If 5 frocks didn't sell, it didn't kill me. But I always was listening to the customer. I always wanted to take in what they had to say. And after some time, what happens is you also learn to sift out very loose critique over very positive critique. There will be customers who will come and crib to you even if nothing is wrong. So you'll learn it, but it's okay. I always took it in the same spirit, and I always tried to better myself with every next product. Yeah.
So saying that, Pooja, 25 years, how has Navika evolved? Like from the day you started and where you are right now, how has Navika evolved?
Navika has evolved in terms of products a lot, actually, and at the same time, not really. I'll tell you why I'm saying it. Since we were doing uniforms, our expertise on working women and what touched their heart was always bang on. We always knew what a working woman would like. She wanted the no fuss clothes. She didn't want to go to a dry cleaner. She wanted clothes which she could carry and travel, which didn't get wrinkled. So all these things, we had a mood board where we used to keep writing. And what happened is we always had fabrics up our sleeve, which were answering to all those questions. The other thing that also happened is I bought in color palettes into India, which were never known. In fact, I still remember, there was a deep colored client of mine who walked in and she said, my mother always told me to wear red and yellow because I'm warm. And I actually did a color test on her by draping fabrics, convinced her that she was a cool tone and that she could carry all the colors that the Western market had to offer, because she used to always say that, whenever I have to go for a conference abroad, I'm the only one who looks like I'm a geisha, in a conference, because I have these pinks and reds and all that. See, we come from a different mindset, of saying that all Indians should wear red. It's not true. So we would go to that extent to do a color test. So basically, we were always upgrading your wardrobe. So that was one thing that we did. So we give a lot of color consent, a lot of shape consent advice to people. So that kind of bonded us with the customers always. So that was the pain point of the working woman. Now she's not wearing uniforms anymore because the company has closed down, but she still continues to work. So how does she dress herself up? So that way the product line evolved with the working women's requirements throughout these 25 years. But by and large, I think we have stuck to a working woman's lifestyle. Also, then, came a boom time again when everyone was traveling abroad for vacations. They would go for 4 days, 5 days. So we launched weekend wear and resort wear for women who were on a holiday. They wanted to take a break from the olives and the khakis. They wanted floral prints. So we did that. But we basically had her on the mood board and we worked around her.
Okay,
that's what
I have one question from the audience asking, how many years did it take for you to reach this position?
Which position? Actually, we are going downhill again. So
wherever you are right now, maybe the initial few years would have been more of your groundwork, getting settled with the products, understanding your customers. So in that aspect,
I would say because I'm one of those 100% kind of people, I would say that I was very confident somewhere 10 to 15 years into the business. But I hope that, people take lesser time. It's just that I was not easily convinced because, there were patterns that I found. So if you don't mind, I'll elaborate on this. Maybe some of them would find. there is a size change in women territory wise. That's something that, so every day was a new learning. What happened is that when we started launching in cities like Vijayawada, vis-a-vis Bangalore, if you saw the bill books of the two places, you realize that Vijayawada had more plus size women and Bangalore had the gym going women. So they were all slimmer. So we realized that we could shift our stocks, which was smaller sized, into the metro cities where they were more weight conscious. Whereas in Vijayawada or I'm just saying that as, I'm just taking a name and comparing the two so that it settles as an example. Women immediately put on weight and they retained that matronly look because they were not going to work. So it went along with their tradition, the tradition of eating well, cooking well, and all that. And in Bangalore, it was more like, I go to the gym, I am 50, but I don't look 50. So, that kind of set. So we used to make notes of this also, That way, what happened is our stock management was flawless. It was really Six Sigma. We knew what size sells in every store. So more traditional parts of India, you will find that women are plumper and it's fine with them. And in urban climates, you will find that the women are slimmer, want to look more youthful and things like that. So, that mindset also was something that we kept in check.
So I think this kind of study requires a lot of market understanding, a lot of understanding about your particular target customers. So I'm sure.
Write down everything. And like I say, your bill book is your Bible. Open it up. You will get all, if you have recorded the SKU, that means the stock keeping unit of your garment, have a look at that garment. The next day it will tell you everything, what is working, why it's working, what sizes are selling, what are the colors that are selling. Everything becomes very, very clear.
I think that will be the USP for Navika, right?
Yeah, totally. They're completely, if you walk in even today, you will go back with something. That much of confidence I have. But the business has been honed to a fine point in terms of in and around the working woman and her challenges.
Okay. Continuing with this discussion, there is one question which is very relevant by Dr. Sharmishta Batterjee. She's asking about fashion changes very fast with innovative approaches which you have adopted for sustenance.
Very, very relevant question. Thank you so much for putting this question because this is something, again, I keep saying. When I went to ISB for the first time, I was singled out in my class by the professor who taught us stock keeping, and he said, how did you evolve this model? Now, the thing is, again, if you're listening to your customer, so who was my customer? It was a working woman. What does she do to get her clothes? She goes to work to get her clothes. She's not spending her husband's money. She's spending her own money. Will you spend your own money on stuff that's going to just be thrown out of your cupboard within a month or 3 months? No. How much time does she have to keep running to Shoppers Stop? In those days, of course, it was only Shoppers Stop and Lifestyle. To keep buying and buying and buying, she can't. So what we used to do is, we used to tell them, here are your 5 basic pants, white, black, beige, something, which was, in the Western neutrals. And then we used to have Indian neutrals. And we used to tell them that this goes with all the kurtas. So again, these were called bundle packs, which we used to market in those days as bundles of love. They were very sensible packs. They had the 5 Western colors and the 5 Indian colors. So your Indian neutrals were covered, which was your maroon, black, off-white. The off-white of Kalamkari is different from the off-white of Jaipur fabric. So whenever you bought a pack of 10 pants, okay, that is a bundle pack, it was 30% cheaper than the single buys. And then we used to get onto a phone call with them, and we recently again did that program. It was called Relook. Clothes that you bought from anywhere, you don't know how to wear them. Give us a call, we'll tell you how to wear them. So what happened is, again, we started solving their problems. So as far as you're solving their problems, you will never really go out of fashion, as one would say. The other thing is, we always said that we make classics with a twist. So our clothes were never embroidered. You had a simple, well-fitting white kurta, for example. simple well-fitting beige kurta, simple well-fitting black, simple well-fitting orange, basic dresses. Basic dresses which were fitted only to the mid of the bust line. It never hugged you on your stomach and hips, because that is the only one point where you're going to put on weight or lose it or have bloating days or not bloating days. So again, it was the understanding of the customer. So we always made classics with a twist, and we would tell them innovative ways to wear them. Do you have dupattas you're not using? They would say, oh yes, I have lots of things that I haven't used. Come get them to us. Then we would drape it around them, and then they would say, oh, I can wear this in so many ways suddenly. So that was the way we solved their problems, and we never got into very high fashion wear which would quickly be out of fashion, because our segment which we identified was the woman whose hard-earned money she was going to throw away in clothes. So you cannot expect her to follow fashion. She won't follow it. Also, she's pressed for time. She will not be able to chase fashion.
Very true. I'm sure everybody will agree to this. There is one question raised by Priya Dayalan, and she's asking, can we outsource our online presence?
Yes, of course you can. It charges you a lot to have your website, to pay for maintenance, to have a payment gateway, to upload all these things. In case you feel that you want to start out in a cautious way, which I really like. I like that approach. Rather than taking a very nasty dip in the pool, it is better you do it. You will come across sites like basically aggregator sites like Jaipur, like shuffling suitcases. They keep a premium amount with them. But what happens is, suppose you hang out with them for about 6 months, you will understand exactly what's happening with your product. It's going to tell you how many people are buying it, what are the sizes that move, without your investing in a website and getting the same information. So therefore, you're saving the cost of your website. Now, when you have understood, then you take your calculated risk and come on to a website. I would say, even if you do it for a year and a half, don't worry about it. Go ahead and do it. But don't put your money right now into a website. And how many websites are there going to be? In the end, this is also something that I was coming to. Whatever we did with the offline stores, are we making the same kind of traffic on the online stores? This is something we've got to understand.
Okay. So, as a women leader, in fact, even I wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Was there any specific challenge you faced because you were a woman in the business? So there is one person who's asking, did you face any gender discrimination in your journey as a woman entrepreneur?
Actually, I did not. I've been asked this question many a times, because I think people expect you to say yes. No, I did not actually. The other fact is that I was not aware of myself being a woman, therefore something special when I joined work. So, which boat are you on? Do you consider yourself a woman whose door has to be opened and a chair has to be pulled out? Then you might find that you are, kind of trying to ride both the bikes. It doesn't work like that. When I came to work, I came to work. And I will tell you something which went back many years when I just started. We were going to JNPT, where the Maersk Line office was, and our ferry capsized in the sea. It was quite, it was the thick of monsoons. All the boys came out and went to work. I also came out of the boat completely wet. My clothes were, of course, because we had fallen into the sea, but I still went to work. So one thing I want to say is that, ladies, please be aware that you're in the workplace. Gender doesn't matter. So if you believe that for yourself, nobody else will treat you differently, because you don't treat yourself differently.
Awesome. And Ms. Nagalata wants to know, ma'am, do you find any differences of options between North and South India culture of dressing?
Big time. I'm a South Indian myself. And what more can I say, that we don't have a single store in the North. We've been asked many a times, but there is a huge difference. You'll find, now this is again from personal experience. I don't think it applies to all sectors, but from my experience, I have lived overseas and in India. I find it easier to sell in South India, to be with the workforce of South India, and similarly, the workforce of the international space. I find it very difficult to work in North India. So there is a huge in the south. In the south, in fact, it's so nice that the most beautiful woman in Chennai, I remember. I think I have never seen such a beautiful woman in my life. She walked up to me and she said, I want this size. So I said, that's 2 sizes larger than your size. So she says, no, I don't like to dress in tight clothes. And in Delhi, you will find that when we went, everyone wanted to dress 2 sizes smaller. So you'll find that kind of a difference. And believe me, the stocks are so differently made that it makes no sense. It's like for me, if I have to choose a market and correlate my stock to that, I would say I would do South India and I would do international spaces, but I would not do North India because that requires a completely different stock setup. And I don't think we want to invest in that. Neither can we convince anyone about fits over there because they wear a very different fit. And you'll probably see it, in the South, we tend to dress in looser clothes and we don't want deep necklines. We want everything conservative. I think the amount of Chinese collars I've sold in the South of India, I can never sell in the world again. But that and then, cowl necks or something. But in the North, it's a completely different thing. So again, following the MVP policy, I would not want to make a completely different set of stock.
Okay, so Ms. Uma Maheshwari has raised a question like how women can be on equal footing with men in facing the challenges of entrepreneurship.
Like I said, first, forget you're a woman. If you have to maintain that about yourself. And the other thing I want to say is, be very friendly. Please like people around you. If you don't like, then don't go out to work. It's not about being an entrepreneur or working in the office space. I find some people are easygoing, collaborative, very friendly. Top of my list is Miss Senta, who's presenting the program, but also my very dear friend Madhu, who appeared in, who hosted yesterday. She was the speaker. Please forget you're a woman for 1 minute. Come out in the space and say, what are the qualities that would want me to work with somebody else? Once you list down those qualities, you'll find, somebody who's got positivity, whom you can discuss things with, and they don't reveal it, and they help you learn, they help you cope. Once you've listed all those qualities, imbibe them, actually practice them. If you don't like it, I would say don't come with a negative energy into the workspace. That's all. Actually, I have never believed the woman and the man, seen at work. I believe in positive and negative at the workspace. Keep it positive. You'll find yourself flourishing. I don't think in India, especially, we have any gender inequality. I have never faced.
Yeah. So Ms. Vijayalakshmi wants to know, like, how important as an entrepreneur you think is it to have like-minded people in the team to follow the idea?
Very nice question. You will never find like-minded people. You will have to bend to like them. You will never find like-minded. Again, now coming back to the positive and the negative space. What happens is that people who are insecure when they start out careers and get negative in this, spread the negative energy, they get found out within the first 4 or 5 years of their careers. People like to work with a team that's fun to work with. Another thing is, I've just covered this session, is when you are in a position of power, please be a leader, don't be a boss, don't order them around, help them grow, nurture them. You will find that everybody has become like-minded. And actually, no one has changed. It's only you who has changed. You won't find like-minded people. You will find that you're taking most of the responsibilities, others are not. Now, at this point, I would say also train them to discharge at least their part of the responsibility that they've been given with the job very well. Make them answerable for that. be tough on them for their KRA. Apart from that, your other interaction that happens at work, can you please help me? Can you please do that? You will realize all that is what is going to build around you an aura that makes people want to work with you. So that what the change that brings us, that the people change to start being likable by you. That is the change I feel. Senta, I've lost you for a minute.
Yeah, I know the team plays a vital role in the success of any company, and having them in place and having them understand your vision is very important. So Ms. Revati is asking, is this the right time to start business? Any financial aid by government for women entrepreneurs?
Is this the right time to start a business? Now, again, I would say have a look at the product or your service offering. What is your business promise? Is it the right time to introduce that promise? So if you're going to start wedding wear at this point, I don't think it's going to click. If you're going to start, however, maybe home cooked health foods, because that's become the flavor of the season now. If you're going to do that, then yes, go ahead and do it. Now, again, I won't say just go into it blindly. If I have to make a business plan around it, I would say, okay, what are the price points? Who's going to be paying? Why are these women not able to cook it on their own? Can I add an additional leaflet saying that this is what this meal provides you? This is how it covers you in such diseases. What is the information? What is the business promise? What is the business position? The position of your brand. Is it a very fancy, moringa powder, something infused latte, or is it a wholesome meal? There's a very nice brand I came across the other day, which was based on khichdis, our very humble pongal, which has actually been escalated to a business model. So that brand only offers you khichdis. So, something like that, yes, I think it will work, because what has happened is, what I'm hearing around is, all the women clients that I had, which were buying while going to office, are now saying, oh, just send some work from home wear and please send some food along with it, because now they're sick of cooking, they're sick of looking into that arrangement. And if you can do something like that, it will work. I think Big Basket has gone up by 70% in their turnover in the last 3 months. So everybody has not gone down. That's what I'm trying to say. Health and wellness will be preventive, therefore the flavor of the season, because now people are scared of being sick. They want to work on immunity. So if you keep that as a factor, then yes, you will be able to make a business model around it. And
I think that's a very useful point on starting business. Maybe I would like to add on the financial part, or from the government side. Maybe if you're from South Tamil Nadu, then there's a lot of government sites like MSME or maybe EDI. In fact, EDI has just launched a funding scheme called Innovation Scheme. Just check their website, and they have funding to 5 lakh, 2 lakh, depending on what you want to do. If it's a technical side, if it's any other non-technical, then there's a lot of platforms open, a lot of schemes from the government. So check the official site or do visit them in person. You will get an idea about the financial aid.
One more point that I want to add here, Senta, because they, I would say that, I don't want to repeat the same things that have been spoken earlier in the last 3 months. I want to just ask you one question. What do you need the money for? Please don't take loans and get saddled with loans. I'm going to say this that with great pride, that both my companies are completely debt free. I have never had an issue living well within my resources. I've always had liquid cash, enough to pay my staff for 1.5 months in the lockdown. Please don't take loans if you don't know what to do with them. Also, once you have taken a loan, engage a consulting business, or someone you consider your mentor to allocate the finances for you. Also do a cost study. Is it feasible? Will I be, if I make at 10 rupees and I take a loan for 2 lakhs to make so many X amount of units, will I be able to sell it at 17 rupees after taxes? Will I make 7 rupees? If you cannot, then please don't start a business. You must study this very much before you go into business. It's not easy to do business and it's a very lonely journey. So
I completely agree with what Pooja said. Okay, so Dr. Sangeeta has a very interesting question. How to manage financial fluctuations both in business and in developing our country in the beginning of any businessman?
Very, very well answered. When you asked question, actually, I really like that question because in this, I read at an airport, and I should share with all of you. There was a caption that came up which said that we buy things we do not need with money that we do not have to impress people we do not like. I found it very nice. When you start spending your money, please understand that whether it's a corona or it's a economic recession or it is a band for 7 days, it will impact your business so much I cannot tell you. So people were just telling me, oh, the lockdown has opened business, it's business as usual. Is it? If you ask me as a very honest entrepreneur, I will tell you, no, it is not. Will it recover next month? No, it will not. When do you think? I think if we do not have a second wave of corona, it might recover slightly. That's just about 50% by September end, if at all. So if you're going to spend all the money on cars and gadgets and, making new stationery and buying new shoes, doing a lot, I don't know, whatever kids spend on nowadays, don't do it. Because you need so much of money, which is the OPEX or the working capital with you when you have times like this. Now imagine you have to still keep your business alive, which we have done by not earning a single rupee for the last 3 months, right? So ask yourself this question every time you go ahead and you purchase something just blindly or something. That's where I want to say, stationery, is it important? Okay, what if you don't have stationery? Can you do without it? Very simple questions, but please look inward, be honest to yourself. And I think that will tell you, keep your working capital availability very high.
That's very true. In fact, Dr. Shankar Narayan is asking, what is the impact of GST on SSI, small scale industries?
I said that when we were studying at ISB, we never recovered after the GST. Well, it's a great format. It's a great format. It works in the accountancy part in a transparent way. But the perceived threat of GST to a customer is that my garment is going to be that much more expensive. At least talking from Navika perspective. If I'm doing a B2B, it is not very severe because what happens is that, your input and output GST matches almost all the time. But if I'm doing a B2C, the retail customer gets impacted. They say we have no company to recover. We don't have input GST coming. So, what you can do at that point is what we call our bundles of love. Sell 2 garments instead of 1. So at least that way you come down on your stock management cost. Otherwise, you're paying for. So that's the module we apply when we are selling B2C. We try and sell so much more to the client so that the client gets the benefit of not having to pay GST. We bear the GST for them, but we also come down on our stock management cost.
We're almost coming to the end of the session, Pooja. I just have a couple of more questions.
Yeah, please.
Dr. Sudharvari, she's asked us, what are the business sectors that you think after COVID will be very profitable?
That have to be?
Very profitable?
Now?
Yeah. After the COVID, she's asking what business sectors will be profitable?
the first space, because in Rhapsody we work in health and wellness, is preventive medicine and wellness that is coming up. Pain management and related wellness. See what has happened. I'll tell you what the difference I'm trying to make is people have started to look inwards for health benefits. So they want to increase their immunity, their lifestyle, so everything around it will improve. So if you have a fitness product, some sort of a biomarker indicator, for example, you want to keep your BP in check or something like that, those kind of information related health information related products. Wellness, yes, nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, I think will all turn towards wellness. This is what my thing is. Pain management was very interesting because we were pitching in for a health client before this, and I told them, I said, get into this because now people are going to be scared of just going in for surgeries and all, because the risk of contamination, though it's overhyped, it's not true, but people are scared of entering hospitals also. It's very funny, but I have noticed that. So they don't mind treating them, away from going to a physical property which might have contamination or viruses or bacteria or something like that. So people are deferring things like this. So I think basically this then now build the industry further around it. So what do nutraceuticals need? So they will need food products or something. So you keep going around, build a concentric circle around this, and all the rings that cover that particular sector are businesses you can get into.
Okay, one last point I wanted to add, since a lot of participants have asked about starting businesses, the new normal is here to stay. I mean, COVID impact is going to be there for some time. In this current situation, as a businesswoman, how important is networking and collaborative living in business?
Oh, I'm one huge believer of collaborations, and a lot of my dear friends know that I'm one who actually holds, the collaboration flag the highest. You must invest in shared resources, not company-owned resources. Company-owned resources will be difficult to uphold. You have to pay your employees on a daily basis. So if you have shared resources which come in every time you want to plug and play, please do that. Also, if there are other experts, like for example, Rhapsody has 4 main experts in our company. We need a 5th one. Rather than employing a 5th one, I would go out and meet an expert and get onto a sort of outsourced arrangement. It is much better for the health of your company to keep your fixed expenses extremely low.
I think way forward it should be more of collaboration rather than starting businesses.
I don't know why it doesn't work in India, but it should be. But it just doesn't work in India. I think there is a lack of faith, or you have to understand that you have to be able to service the people that work for you. If you're not going to be able to do that, eventually it will harm you in a reputation sort of way, in an HR related way. Once and by the way, Senta, I think that the new normal is changing on a weekly basis. So when it finally settles at some sort of a new normal, actually, which is here to stay, you will realize you need all your reputation and your HR policies in place. It might be too late. So treat the people that work with you well, and hire them from project to project. So I think freelancers will do well. Also collaborations will do very well. That's what I feel.
One last question from Vijayalakshmi. Gender discrimination, as you said, may not be in reality, or as individual entrepreneur can handle it. How do you make people around you, your family, your friends understand and support your idea? Tips to make them understand how serious you are about it and will work out. So other than information about the market, to make them understand it's feasible. I think from the emotional side, how do you convince your family and friends is what you
Again now, I'll tell you this and you will laugh. I come from a family where my mother was in her times postgraduate, and my father is a general in the army. I mean, he was a general in the army. He retired from that one. So I was the family fool. I was a family fool who gave up a job at Maersk Line and Sandvik Asia to come and sell frocks. It was not easy for me to convince anyone, but through action, through example, every time that I did something and it was acknowledged and I was able to support myself financially from, I'm talking now from the last 28 years, they have started to look up to me. So I would say, first, why is that validation important to you? If you believe it's an idea that will work, and if you are living your life, which is very principled, so I wake up at 6, I cook up the whole day's meal with the help of my housemaid. I come to work. I go back in the evening right after the session, and I will do Pilates for 45 minutes to an hour. And I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't party. I go to bed at 8:30. So why would I want anyone else's validation? The thing is, like I say, please be honest to yourself. My customers have given me so much of love and support during the COVID times, and it's apart from this session that I had shared with Sentha that we opened at a huge sale, and to each one of them we had sent a small gift, matching earrings with their clothes, and we had sent them a note saying thank you for your support. We really meant it. Each one of them has replied to me on WhatsApp. So the thing is, when you have done everything right, you are doing your best, I don't think you need to worry about the validation so much. So don't try and build support just on ideas. Do it and they will start supporting you. That's what I'm trying to say. What you do will ascertain your position in your family, and that is what is most important.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask you, Pooja, we have a lot of faculties, as participants. So how do we identify a talent in a student? How do we mentor them and nurture their entrepreneurship skills? How do we do that?
Very nice, because I do this for a living in Rhapsody. I met a founder actually, and I told him, he was telling me how he wants to handle people and this and that and all, and I told him, no, don't be the CEO of your company, be the COO of your company. And he said, what if I am going to be the CEO? What would you tell me as a friend? I said, don't do it. Shut down your company, but don't be the CEO. You're not CEO material. And to another friend who was a model, who wanted to start a business in entertainment, I told her, don't get into operations, do the BD. So the thing is, I am not trained in psychometrics, but I would say if psychometrics is a tool that you can use to support your gut, your insight about the student, it would be a good tool. The other thing is, after years of being in this industry, I think I have that kind of deep insight, which I call gut. I know exactly who's not going to last at the BD level and who's not going to last at the operations level. So you will also be able to know your students in that way. There are many students who will persevere and all, but you will realize that they are not team players. So would you want to give them a leadership role without training? No. Yet I would say, if you train people, many of them are actually able to overcome and come into a completely different spectrum. So this is not a either or kind of a question. Actually, there is a lot of information we need before we bracket a human being into something. But people who are ready to learn are the ones, I think, who basically will make it anywhere. It's the fire in the belly that will also tell you. So there are many such pointers. I think we need to understand each one of them very critically.
Okay, great. So I'll just complete with one question from Jayalakshmi. Can we encourage students to start new business post-COVID, or when?
See, again, like I said, what is the scenario? The other thing I want to say, Santa, here is that please don't assume things in your mind and go to sleep. Like we had a mood board. I would encourage every one of you to have a mood board. Keep your ideas on a stable mood board. Look at them every day. Have things changed? Keep a big whiteboard in your house. If you're not going out anywhere, keep a notebook. Keep your ideas there. You will slowly start realizing that there is a different kind of behavior pattern emerging. Out of that behavior pattern will emerge the needs. Out of the needs will be your business solution. What are you offering as a solution? If there is no solution, please don't start a business. But if there is a solution, you will be able to start a business. So after you have sifted these three things, then start making a business model. Instead of just saying, I'll go apply for a loan, don't do that also. I know that a lot of people are offering, they will be offering. First put your plan together. Whom are you going to sell? What are the price points? What is the variety you can offer? So what you can offer at phase 1 has to change by phase 2. So that is something that you're going to have to mentor your students about. This is not going to be an easy thing. This is what we are doing at Rhapsody. We have a client who's come to us from the North Americas and Canada. We are actually working on providing them a good reality check, because they said, we're ready to employ you. We don't want to get employed, because even if you want to employ us, will you be able to pay us month after month? So it is better that we take a fees just to assess your model, actually knock it around, see the territory in which you want to, though you're saying, yes, I want to do international business, the first phase will never be international. So, you have to understand all these realms very, very well. Keep it in writing. Don't keep it in your head. You'll forget it all. I've forgotten everything. I'm talking about my business today, looking at a presentation that is open on my laptop. We tend to forget. So be very thorough on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pooja, for this interesting and informative session. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Over to Ms. Renuka, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Pooja, for your explicit response. It was really very lively, and thank you, Ms. Sendamari, for moderating this interview. I have an announcement for the participants. I've been asked about the feedback form link. We will inform you in the following sessions when the feedback form link will be given. And secondly, we have been noting the details of all the attendees on the day-to-day basis. So the attendees are being recorded by us on day-to-day, and based on which we will be issuing the e-certificates. And thank you very much. I call upon my colleague, Ms. Anupama Rajan, to extend her gratitude and brief us about our tomorrow's session.
Renuka, 1 minute if I could take. I'm seeing a lot of comments which are running down my phone. Yes. People do want to reach me on mail. Please feel free to. Don't hold back. I'm very happy to help. So I will give you my email ID. I think Senta can also send it to you.
Sure.
Please feel free to contact us, and we'll be there for you.
Surely. We will pass on this mail ID to all the participants in their respective mails. Thank you. Over to Ms. Anupama.
Thank you, Renuka ma'am. Good evening. It is a great honor to thank on the behalf of the Department of Bank Management for the Faculty Development Program, the Unlockdown, in association with Beta Monks Technology Factory Private Limited on the topic ABC of E. The entire session has been a holistic approach towards entrepreneurship. The manner of presentation was very realistic and thought-provoking. I thank Ms. Pooja Sane for such an inspiring and informative presentation. With this, let me conclude the session and see you all tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the day 3 session by Dr. Srimati Kesan, founder and CEO, Space Kids India. Thank you all.
Anu, I would like just to hop in here. Dr. Srimati Kesan, she is India's pride. She is very popularly called as the Iron Lady or the Space Lady of India. So I would request the participants not to miss tomorrow's session.
Thank you and have a happy day. Thank you.